just want to use this few minutes to say hello and welcome Tom again and all of you that are here at this little gathering of masters.
And Tom, all of the settings are set. As long as you don't play any musical instruments, you should get all of the information and sound that you desire. Because we know the music settings don't come on with these microphones. Not that that's a bad thing. And thanks for your patience. Okay, and we're waiting for Bruce and maybe a couple of others to pop back in, or I'm assuming that their 2 minutes are up.
I think we
Yeah,
can proceed, right?
yep. And while we're waiting for them, I'll just go ahead and introduce one of the High Vibe Channeling's favorite long-standing channelers, Qigong master Tom Leichardt, who teaches medical Qigong classes and also acupuncture, performs sound healing. And on YouTube, you can actually find videos of him from 15 years ago.
It's true.
It's amazing. His website is sumarihealingarts.com, and you can find him on YouTube and on Facebook in the Modern Mystic Mystery School. And he's on episode 40 is coming up of the Channeled Truth. I guess that's mixed with Higher Mind and Channeled Truth.
Yeah, there's actually two shows. One is the channeling of me, and then one is exploring channeling with guests, and
Okay.
oftentimes they channel on the show.
So you have 39 with just the one, the Higher Mind.
39. Well, there's 39. There's some filler episodes in between and whatnot. In the
Okay.
beginning, my numbering scheme wasn't too exact, shall we say.
Hey,
So,
it's the content and we all enjoy it and it's always really good information. So,
well, thank you.
and with that, we will leave it up to Tom if there's anything that you wish to tell us, or if anybody
Um,
has a question for Tom before he gets started.
yeah, I think we might as well just get right into it. We can do questions later.
Thank you.
So yeah, I, as usual, have no idea what's going to come except for some inklings, but I think it's going to be a little bit of a follow-on from the last episode, which was multi-dimensional physics or trans-dimensional physics. So a little more of that, but we'll see. And I'm always, as much as I've been doing this, I'm always nervous before I start, right? So for all of those you out there who are channeling, right, it's pretty, well, at least to me, that's pretty normal, right? It's part of the process. So without further ado, I think everything's recording, so we'll get right into it. Good day to you. We welcome you to these realms of light, where the vast majority of who you are also exists. We welcome you to these realms of light from where your physical lives, your physical personalities, and your entire physical worlds also spring. We welcome you into this wonderful, wonderful circle of co-creation and mutual expansion. And today we will use the last channeling session as a kind of springboard, and we will endeavor to explore the realms of multidimensional physics all the more, meanwhile stretching the channel in his ability to translate these transdimensional terms and transliterate them into physical terms, which is a challenge in and of itself. With that, then, we can call this the multidimensional movie theater, as we often love to expand on the analogy and the metaphor of theater, as well as games, to help to explain the nature of the quest that your soul embarks upon in becoming physicalized and crystallized into the selves that you know yourselves to be. Now, to begin our multi-dimensional movie theater experience, we will begin with the one-dimensional movie strip that you are familiar with, which passes through the projector light. And as this light flickers through each frame, this light, like your consciousness, is what illuminates the frames, the single frames of existence. And through the repetition of these frames in a series, you have the experience of movement through time. You have 3 dimensions of space, 1 dimension of time. Now, we will expand on this a little bit because while you might consider that a movie strip is a series of frames and that each frame gets projected, we will expand this to be a strip whereby only certain frames will get illuminated. That is, the frequency of the light or the frequency of the consciousness will determine which frames are projected on the screen of your physical life. Now, that helps us to get into or wade into the realm of parallel realities. For you see, you have many timelines going on simultaneously in parallel, and you are perceiving but one of these timelines. And you consider that to be your movement through time, and you define that as your life, at most times unaware of these other parallel life themes or sub-themes within the larger theme that you are exploring. So consider this frequency of the projector. When it has a certain frequency, it will illuminate, let us say, every 7th frame, just for simplicity's sake. So you're moving at a frequency where every 7th frame is illuminated. Now, remember, this is just an analogy to stretch your minds a little bit. But let us say you change the frequency of your consciousness, and instead of going click, click, click. It's click, 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 a little bit faster. So you see now a different series of frames would be projected. You would skip over some, but perhaps not as many. And a different series of frames would show up on your movie projection screen. Now, to expand a simple analogy, we would like to expand this linear film strip to be a little bit more dynamic. So let's expand this movie strip to be not just one series of frames, but rather imagine a grid of frames, much like your checkerboard. And now this is passing in front of the projector at its own frequency. And now the projector light illuminates these squares in certain patterns of vibration. Now, as you speed up your vibration, as your flicker increases, you shift to another timeline, as it were. For you see, you have the timeline going at every 7th frame. You have the timeline going at every 10th frame. You might have a timeline going at every 5th frame. And you see that they are all going on in parallel. However, you, from your vantage point, have the free will to choose your particular frequency so that you are moving through these frames that are existing in the here and now, creating the illusion of time. And as you flicker and shift your frequency, you create shifts in the timelines that you experience, even though they are all there simultaneously. So oftentimes in your spiritual world, you speak of frequency. Oh, I'm raising my frequency. This is an analogy that can help you to understand this in a somewhat physicalized, crystallized way. It's not a perfect analogy, but it will help you to stretch your mind into this realm of parallel potentiality that each and every one of you has. Now, you could expand this even further. You could imagine each click or the rate of physical reality would have a circular spinning wheel, not unlike the spinning roulette wheel in your gambling scenarios. And while, yes, you might have a little bit of randomness in the equation, because after all, you do want to be surprised, you can consider that each click of physical reality has a spinning wheel of probabilities. And based on your frequency, when you are clicking your vibration as it clicks within the overall click of physical reality, you are choosing different frames. Now, this analogy is to help you to understand that in each moment, you don't have but one reality that you're stepping into. In each moment, based on your vibration, you can click into any number of frames that would seem to become the continuity of your own life. So you have tremendous amounts of choice. You have tremendous amounts of leeway in how you explore this theme. Yes, you are bound by certain parameters that are established at your soul level, the free will of the soul. And yet within that, you have tremendous capacity to click through these frames. And so much of this is based upon your vibration, your belief structures, for your beliefs are designed to almost like a magnetic force to attract you to a certain series of frames based upon what that belief represents. The belief has a certain frequency. Therefore, it allows you to choose a certain frequency of frames that creates your life. Now, within the same life, you could create a completely alternate series of frames based upon shifting your vibration. And each click of physical reality, the roulette wheel is spinning, and it is your vibration that determines which particular frame is chosen out of that wheel to fit into the next time slot that becomes the perceived life that you are living. And you create continuity from these frames. a sense that one moment very easily leads into the next, but each moment, remember that parallel reality wheel is in front of you in each moment, and you are choosing vibrationally which direction you are moving into. You have tremendous, tremendous power to choose. Choose vibrationally. Choose the movie that you are creating frame by frame, moment by moment. Thus, that you can become the director of your own life rather than merely an actor within it. And it is the blending of these two consciousnesses that allows you to become more lucid, more fluid, more flexible. The entire movie production becomes much more malleable, much more fluid, like a dream reality, like a lucid dream, where you begin to realize that you have a great degree of leeway into how this dream will unfold, for your physical lives indeed are dreams. Slightly more densified and crystallized to your perspective, but dreams nevertheless. So that is our brief foray into expanding this topic of hyperdimensional physics, multidimensional physics, adding in yet one more analogy that you can play with when you feel stuck in your life. Consider that the roulette wheel is spinning in each moment, in each heartbeat, in each breath. Which reality will you choose? It is not a foregone conclusion how things will play out. You get to choose by your vibration, by your beliefs. Likewise, do we encourage you always, if you are creating movies that you do not prefer, by all means do investigate that magnetic quality. Use the reality of your life, the feelings, the thoughts, to backtrack to the belief that must generate them. For you have many beliefs on autopilot. You are choosing frames at a predetermined by the belief system frame rate, and you are thusly seeming to move unconsciously through life. But this is the age where you are awakening to the lucidity, to the power that you have as the director, even while you are ensconced in the physical frame, in the physical life. Therefore, take great joy in the nature and the structure of existence, and the nature and the structure of your own being. For you are existence. You are infinite, merely having the experience that seems finite. So do enjoy this process. Enjoy the process of awakening, the process of recognizing and reclaiming your choice. And let yourself create the life of your dreams, for your life is a dream. Become lucid in waking, even as you become lucid in dreaming. And so with that, we will conclude our brief expansion into these metaphors, and we will open it up to any questions. So don't be shy.
Greetings.
Good day to you.
Thank you very much for the co-creation.
And you as well.
You know, I'm a curious being, so I would like to ask. It would be possibly safe to assume that the persons within this group have interactions also in parallel lives.
That is probably a safe assumption for at least some of the individuals.
Would you be allowed to share some examples of those?
Are you asking the channel to share his parallel lives?
No, you to share some examples of different individuals of the group. amongst themselves, because I feel like I have connections with people in parallel lives, but I'm limited, but I'm curious. And I realize that not it is not necessarily relevant for me now, but curiosity is my excuse.
Well, let us frame it this way. First of all, our excitement is about sharing the tools and the techniques and the frameworks of understanding that can help you to find your own connections and your own insights about the nature of the structure of your lives and your existences. Thusly, we sometimes, but rarely, engage in what you might say psychic readings. But we do encourage the use of these tools to explore your own parallel lives if you're curious. However, we will also add that they will become available to you when they are relevant for you to know them. In other words, you will know what you need to know when you need to know it. However, most of the time, many of you have set up your lives in such a way that you keep this information more in the unconscious. You visit it often in your dreams, and you get some bleed throughs. However, it is not as yet fully common to have this in your daily lives, but it is becoming more common. The fastest path to connect to your parallel life streams is joy, passion, creativity, to ground your soul's energy by taking actions in the domains that bring you the most joy. Creative projects, passion projects, things that, as you say, make you come alive. When you channel that energy through your physical frame by taking the actions in the domains of your joy and your passion, you raise your frequency to the point where these bleed throughs become more and more common. For as we have spoken, this is about frequency. And at certain frequency rates, you can receive not only the main theme of your own life, but also you develop the ability to see some of these parallel themes, whether it is parallel versions of this life or other lives that you might be living. And this is becoming more common. However, trust the timing with which this information unfolds. And oftentimes, rather than pursuing it directly, it is sometimes or often most advantageous to simply absorb yourself in that which brings you the most joy. And these things will pop off into your life in the most appropriate timing and synchronicity. Does that help?
It helps very much, thank you. I was suspecting this would be the case.
How psychic of you.
Thank you so much once again, Illy, for joining us for this co-creation. We always appreciate it.
Indeed.
I am curious about how patterns and cycles work, since they seem to affect our physical linear world, even though it is an illusion. But I get the idea that the patterns and cycles behind it are not an illusion, but representative of actual energies that we reflect. Can you explain a little bit more about how patterns and cycles affect the reality which we experience physically and in higher non-physical levels, please?
A big question. Give us a moment. Your planet is a planet of cycles, as you know. And cycles will often be part of the structure of certain realms. And even your own existence is a type of pattern and structure. Oftentimes, in order to have an experience of something other than oneness, you break down the oneness into multiplicity. And as you do so, patterns begin to emerge. If you take the whole and you slice it into two, you have a polarity. If you slice it into four, you have four distinct parts or phases of the one. You split it into eight, and you have 8 phases. You split it again. You have 16, 32, 64. 64 phases. This is the nature of the one becoming the many. Now, part of the experiential quest, shall we say, that you embark upon as humans is this quality of, quote unquote, leaving the one and coming back to the one. It's a cycle. It's breath in, breath out. You go through a period of seemingly forgetfulness, and then you remember from a new vantage point. You remember who you are, and eventually you remember more and more that you're part of the oneness. You have a return path. Breath in, breath out. Now, this can show up in a physical life. It can show up within chapters of your physical life. It can show up in groups, soul families, species, and so on. You might have periods of descending into forgetfulness, periods of ascending into remembrance. And each time that you do so from many different levels, individuals, collective levels, you have an experience of the one from new vantage points. Thus, the pattern emerges out of the desire of the one to know itself, shall we say, by creating reflections and portions of itself. Is there a way that you want to expand upon this?
Oh, that gave me a really good realization. And since my question was fraught with 3D references, it seems to me that the fabric of many realities emerge from the weaving of choices of the energies which choose to inhabit that reality, if that makes sense.
Indeed, it is like strands of consciousness on many, many multidimensional levels. It can be the strands of consciousness of all the lives of the oversoul and how they weave together a pattern. It can be how you as an individual weave with the others of your civilization the pattern of consciousness through time. There are many, many levels at which this exists. There are certain groupings of aspect selves that weave a pattern as you blend together the experience not only on this planet, but other planets and other dimensions. So indeed, there are many, many weavings. And this is all an aspect or a result of the one becoming the many and playing with ideas of components, parts, reflections, and those reflections that create reflections and more reflections within reflections to infinity and beyond. Infinities of infinities.
Indeed. Thank you very much. Because even with our human space, physical time, matter, um, o- over pattern, I will say, it just, we think of different dimensions as numerical when it's really just more encompassing of remembrance. But there's no real progression of that. It could jump around from number to number, and they could mix and be more fluid than what we would be able to conceive in our physical forms, in my opinion. Does that come reasonably close to some to some level of truth on that?
It is, of course, your truth. And
Yes.
there are, of course, many truths and truths within truths. And there are many ways of organizing consciousness. As you might surmise, your oversoul has simultaneous consciousness of the many lives, of which you are one part. Whereas your consciousness, not that it is lesser in any way, because it is just as important. But each component of all that is all that is. Therefore, have greater reverence for the consciousness that you are. And that experience of seeming separateness so that you can focus on your unique vantage point is indeed precious and important. And yet there are other oversoul aspects, shall we say, that take all lives simultaneously into account and perceive them as the unique patterns or puzzle pieces within the whole, of which you are a part and fit into brilliantly.
Thank you. It seems, and I love your analogy about breathing in and out, because it seems to me that all consciousness is breathing in and out. We just don't know who's doing the breathing.
Indeed. Experience thusly the breath of God, if you wish.
Anyone else have a question?
Yeah, I guess I do have a question. Gonna go back to the time multiplexing analogy or metaphor that you gave us a message on. That applies from a personal level. The question is, how does that relate to the collective manifestation of what, generally speaking, we say that we are in this reality? How does that,
Well,
play?
first of all, the term multiplexing lights up in a very special way. And even though we are not accessing any particular engineering knowledge on the part of the channel, it feels appropriate and apt description. Now, as you, into your timeline, choose consciously or unconsciously different frames from the myriad of frames that are possible and relevant for your life, you are creating, let us say, a thread to time-space. You are creating your movie. You are creating it frame by frame. Now, we will not get into the idea that you create the past from the present. We will shelve that for now. Because from your vantage point, it appears as if you have a past. Thusly, you have a series of stringed events, much like you place beads upon a necklace. You choose each moment and you put it upon the string, and then you string yourself from a myriad of beads. You have another choice and you choose that and you create a timeline, shall we say, a necklace, a series of events. Now that strand of consciousness also weaves simultaneously and in synchronous union with the strands of your fellow beings sharing your physical world. For they are creating their own necklace, shall we say, their own movie, their own string of frames or moments. Now, they are two multidimensional beings, thusly they are existing as series of many probable strands, of which they are crystallizing into one or collapsing into one from their vantage point, and you and them are synchronously choosing each other's probable strands based upon vibration. This, of course, happens at other levels of consciousness. That is a kind of natural affinity, a kind of law of attraction, if you will, since those words are popular in your world, a kind of natural affinity. So when, let us say, there are 10 beings in a soul family having an experience together, and you can extrapolate this to the entire world, but we'll just use the number 10. Now, each of those 10 individuals is creating out of a series of potentialities one unique strand of consciousness, one unique movie, one necklace. Now, as each person creates a necklace to that individual's vantage point, the other 9 members will seem to go on the journey with that individual. However, they are perceiving the version of those 9 individuals that matches the frequency of the choices that they are making. Thusly, they are not aware not only of the other probable lives that they are living or the probable variations of their own life, they are also not perceiving the other probable variations of the other 9 individuals' lives. They are only perceiving the one collapsed or crystallized strand of consciousness that is irrelevant and synchronously synced, vibrationally synced to the choices or the strand that they are making. Thusly, you can see that while one individual might have a series of probable lives, the probable interactions between just these 10 individuals are immense. Each moment you are choosing from a series of potential events that could take place. You are crystallizing one into physical focus, while the other 9 individuals, they are making choices, and the choice that they make that matches the choice that you make collapses into their particular strand of consciousness, or their necklace, if you will, their movie. And so you have a parallel interaction between these 9 or the other 9 individuals and you, the 10th. You are moving in parallel together, but you are moving in sync. Thus, you are not perceiving those other variations and versions of yourself, neither the many versions of the relationships that you have with each of these 9 individuals. Thusly, your relationships have tremendous multi-dimensional depth, even within a single lifetime, with many, many variations. Thusly, the power of the idea that you cannot change others, but you can change yourself. When you have this understanding, you can sense that, of course, when you shift yourself to a new version of you, oscillating at a new frequency, while you can't change others, you are syncing up with the versions of the others that are matching the new frequency that you have chosen. Thusly, your choices have tremendous power. However, you are putting the cart before the horse if you attempt to change them, to get them to line up to what you think you prefer. However, often you don't recognize the power you have in shifting your vibrational focus, your frequency, choosing new events into your lives, and that automatically chooses other versions of those individuals. By definition, you are a new person in each moment. They are new people in each moment. You have tremendous power in the fluidity and the flexibility of your so-called rigid, crystallized physical reality.
The
Any other
stabilization of vibrations is critical in order to move into what I'm going to call a more appropriate and more stable reality.
Can you please repeat that?
The stabilization of our vibrational states.
Stabilization.
Yes, stabilization. In other words, we instead of going from one thing to what appears to be almost an opposite, moment to moment, or day to day, let's say. So central is the need for us to stabilize ourselves vibrationally.
We wouldn't necessarily put it that way. Now, if you want to define stabilization as being centered in your own core, in your own being, by all means,
Yes, yes,
then of course, the more you
yes.
stabilize, to use your word, into the truth of who you are, you will naturally choose then the realities that match that. And as such, you will draw to you the versions of others who are also stabilized in their core frequency. And you will have quite a lovely time of it. Conversely, choosing realities based upon a sense of separation or a sense of lack or not being enough, disconnecting from source, off of your center, you make choices that then fall into harmonic resonance with similar choices of other individuals. And thusly you have, well, a more challenging time of it or an experience of separation.
Thank you.
Anyone else with questions? No one is stopping by with another query. Illy, do you have any parting message for us or anything that you think we would enjoy?
Very good. Well, first of all, we appreciate each and every one of you for stretching your understanding and for helping to ground these energies into the physical frame through the co-creative group experience, encouraging one another. It is indeed wonderful to be a part of. Now, we would add that if you wish, you can imagine these spinning parallel reality wheels as being, shall we say, in succession. As you step into each moment, there is a spinning reality wheel there. And vibrationally, you choose one frame out of these myriads of possibilities, probabilities. You crystallize that frame, and then you have, in the next moment, the next spinning reality wheel. So rather than having a linear film strip with a static frame, each frame is a spinning parallel reality wheel. Thusly, as each of these spinning reality wheels clicks into the projector, you as the consciousness, based on the flicker of the light, will choose from that spinning wheel a probable version of yourself to crystallize, and then click the next frame into that position, moves the next spinning reality wheel. And again, you click out of these myriads of possibilities the next frame of your movie. Thusly, to you, in your time-space reality, you are manifesting what appears to be a film strip of single frames. However, from the moment of choice, the moment of fluidity, and each now moment, you are in a spinning reality wheel, parallel reality wheel, crystallizing moment by moment, each frame. So consider that your physical film strip is so much more dynamic. And this expands even into your so-called memories of the past. For while you seem to always have a film strip of single frames, from the moment of each moment, from the now of your life, you are also choosing your past, how you perceive your past. Now, while you have built in a certain amount of continuity in each moment, you do recrystallize each of those frames that you seem to have passed through, for they are still spinning reality, parallel reality wheels. Yet the nature of your physical mind will always present it to you as a fixed film strip. Thusly, begin to bring the sense of the spinning parallel reality wheel not only into your present and your future, but also your past. Each time you look at a film strip now, consider the spinning parallel reality wheel. When you look at a past photo, consider that spinning parallel reality wheel. You are choosing your past also from the present. Now, we did not want to include that in the very beginning because we don't want to spin you out too much in these concepts, but rather to expand upon them very slowly and deliberately. And then our closing words will be thusly to remind you of the tremendous power of choice you have in each moment. Recognize the fluidity and the flexibility of your life, that nothing is set in stone. See the malleability, the dreamlike quality of your physical lives, which are not solid at all. The experience of your lives is real, and yet it is an illusion. Play with that paradox. And with that, we will, with our deep appreciation for each and every one of you, wish you and each and every one of you a beautifully glorious and a fond good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom and Illy.
Yeah, well, that was nice. That was fun.
Yeah, it was. It was some, and because I got the impression that when we asked the question, Illy is checking out and saying, what is the best way that this organism can understand what I need to convey? And then so it's kind of more tailored to, and like everything else, it's all tailored to the audience, but it was nice that I got the impression that that was occurring. So,
Yeah, it's like there's a spinning parallel reality wheel there. Like, how am I gonna,
Exactly.
yeah,
even the
It,
words that are chosen, all of it.
it's a good way of realizing that everything is here and now. Okay, because all you got to do is just split time more and more and more and more. You got more and more and more frame capability, and the word of infinity comes into the picture. So you can be infinitely small in your frames, so to speak.
Mhm.
Okay,
Microcosms within
micro,
microcosms. Yep.
absolutely, absolutely, and so and interestingly for me, okay, yes, Tom, I'm an engineer.
Okay.
And among other things, a communications engineer. So I can tell you a lot of other schemes of encoding information, but that doesn't matter. What's important is that I have these thoughts when I was an engineer that I should explore reality from the perspective that I was actually using in communications to,
Because it is a microcosm.
but it's exactly. And I said, oh my God, it's a very old thing that I came up many years ago.
Yeah,
Of
when you
course,
say multiplexing, it's just like there's a light went off, like poof, like, oh, there's
yeah,
something like I
right.
want to
Well,
look that up.
and that's time multiplexing. You have frequency multiplexing. You can do phase multiplexing. It's kind of amazing. I once decided to use simple schemes of phase. Let's see how I can explain this. Well, maybe with this pen. Okay, if I place think of this pen as a spoon. If I place the spoons on utensil holder, okay, in this same direction. That's typically what people do. But what about if I have some little shorter spoons and I still want to put it in the holder for the spoons? What I would do is I would reverse the position of the uh, uh, a little bowl that this of the spoon, and therefore now what I have done is I've used the concept of changing the face of something, and now I can identify it with great ease.
But
The
what if I
spoons
put
that
a
are
big,
facing that way are slightly smaller. The spoons that are facing the other way, and I could come up with a scheme that says ignore all the ones that are facing that way. I'm not interested in that. I'm only interested in these, and that's exactly how you do communications.
Mhm.
Uh, so the same thing applies to what we call reality. I think same
But
kind
what
of ideas. There's zillions of ways of doing that sort of thing.
Exactly. And what I think sometimes we forget about is that that wheel is actually a layered gyroscope that's going on and turning every which way, and we don't know how many different balls or structures or layer or whatever is composed of it, but it's not.
Christiana has a question for Tom. So
Oh, okay.
come forth.
Yes, but I did not intend to interrupt Ray.
I was done,
Oh,
and it doesn't happen often enough.
yeah. Well, believe me, he's holding the thought. It will continue.
In another reality. I was going to tell you, Louis, that what if we considered that there is no spoon?
Well, you can get to that too.
Yeah.
That's the most simple metaphor.
I totally.
That I could use.
You know what you're describing is actually what the ancients would describe as basically polarity of yin and yang. You have
Yeah.
the solid line and the broken line, right? And then how you arrange all those creates patterns of code
Yeah.
that you have, eight of them together creates one character, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Absolutely.
that's
You
pretty
could
much
use it
how
for language. There's many things. It ties. Interestingly, communications. All of that ties to information theory. How
Mhm.
much information can you pack?
Totally.
Okay. And all of a sudden, engineers were discovering many other ways of doing it because they couldn't expand the channel. They had to use what you had, basically.
Mhm.
But the same basic idea is something that you can use for all that exists. And the amount of information that can be coded, when you think about it, a particle, just the smallest little thing that you can encounter, a grain of sand actually contains all the information sufficient to recreate this universe.
Are you guys
You
gonna
know,
let Christine
oh
Anna
yeah, right.
ask her question?
Christiana, please.
Thank you. Hello, first of all, and nice to meet you. And I wanted to ask, do you prefer to be addressed as Tom or Thomas?
Oh, it doesn't matter. Either way is fine. So Thomas is fine, yeah, for
Yeah, I
continuity.
would prefer Thomas. Um, but apart from that, I wanted to say for the record, the Scottish accent is my favorite accent of the whole of planet Earth.
Hmm.
Um, and I
Nice
wanted to
smiles.
ask, sorry? Um, have I identified it correctly? 'Cause when you channel, it seems to come through more.
You know, I've heard people describe my channeling as sounding like Irish or Scottish, and I think that seems to be the case, but I don't try to make it that way. Like I'm like literally I'm from Poland. I lived in the Midwest, so I don't really have a connection. I probably have some kind of accent, but I don't think it's that one, you know what I mean? So I don't know why it comes out that way.
How very interesting.
Yeah,
And I really don't even try. It just is what it is, you know?
I'm gonna make it a point to ask Illy next time, how
Hmm.
come we interpret it that way?
Okay. I'm definitely getting like the color green comes to me even as you say that. There's some connection there that I don't know.
Maybe it's a parallel life.
Possibly. That would be kind of a logical thing. Speaking of parallel lives, though, as Lewis was speaking, I'm just like, I know I have a parallel life that's doing exactly what he's describing. You know what I mean? So yeah, they're out there. Oh, you were the one who asked about parallel lives and knowing our lives, right?
Yeah, I was just being curious as I am.
Good.
I know in discussions like this, um, I just have this feeling, even though there will be, when you begin to talk of engineering terms and things like that that are out of my understanding, I can totally listen to that and accept it, because there's something the grandmothers have taught me to say when I get into a situation where I'm trying to understand the conversation on this, what I call Arla level of the 3D existence. And that is, I know that I know. And so everything becomes relevant at that time. And I've noticed with Tom, you and Illy, that jumps in several times, and I will hear that when I'm listening, is that I know that I know. And for me, that's a peaceful place.
Hmm.
So whatever that connection is, of listening to Illy, it just brings that I know that I know.
And it's the only thing that matters, right?
Yes,
There's
exactly.
nothing else that matters.
It's almost like, well, at least for me, when I listen to channeled material, sometimes it's almost like my physical mind almost like kind of checks out a little bit. And I know I'm receiving something on a vibrational level, like a download level. And it's like I can catch myself kind of glitching out because it's almost as if my physical mind is going into like a dream state, which is the level at which it's used to receiving that kind of information, right? So it's like you kind of start getting a little glitchy or a little like, oh, tired. You know what I mean?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, this is good. It's, I always get kind of nervous before and so, whoa, what's gonna, it's like, so I'm used to teaching and usually I have prepared notes and, a
But Tom,
lesson
when was the
plan.
last time that we threw tomatoes at you? You don't have that
Right?
experience here.
So have you noticed a difference, Tom, after taking so much time off, now that you're doing it on a more regular basis? I mean, because some of the people might not know that you're doing regular channeling just for yourself too.
Almost daily, yeah. But there's sometimes I sit down and literally there's just nothing there. And I've just learned that to accept it like, okay, today it's like you're picking up the phone and it's like I'm not getting an answer on the other side. I'm like, okay, that's cool. But I sat and I gave it, but I make the point to at least, almost every day. I mean, sometimes it gets crazy, but to sit down and just check in like, okay, is there anybody on the line? And most of the time there is, right? And I'll get a session just for myself and I'll just play it out and I get it. What happens is that consciousness level, whatever you want to call it, strings consciousness through the experiences of my life that I always seeing as separate. And all of a sudden I see like, oh my God, this is so related to this, and this reflects to that, and this relates to that dream I had, and it's all part of this bigger thing unfolding. But my physical self just goes through it of like, okay, here's this experience over here, here's that experience over here. It's also broken up into these segments, right? And the channeling state helps me to kind of weave it all together and see like, oh my God, it is all just part of a bigger theme I'm exploring. And it just makes more sense.
Yeah, and I love the part tonight where you said that we bring all of our soul family lives with us in each of the lives which we experience. We just aren't aware of that. But I know, like, when I do my process for the beings of light channeling, I invited my ancestors and descendants and counterparts because I know they're with me. But I never really thought about bringing, the entire gang with me the whole time, and others. But I
And
just
I
think
think that
that's
has to do
interesting.
with the nature of our focus as we focus down into very, very specifics, right?
Yep.
And so it's like there's no quote unquote room at our particular frequency of consciousness for all those. It's almost like at other levels you can see multiple frames like overexposed one on top of the other, and it's all good. But in here it's like we're like, no, just one frame at a time. You know what I mean?
Yep. We have wide shoulders so we can hold all the beings that don't have shoulders.
Yeah, that too.
Because humans, we like to hold on to the frame. Don't want to advance it.
Right.
Or edit it.
I know somebody that doesn't want to edit it.
Oh, what a fun evening. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was quite exciting.
Yeah, so I'm gonna skedaddle because I think I can still get some daylight to walk the dog. I can't tell from in here, but I think there's some daylight out there.
Yeah, not here. You took all of ours away,
Yeah,
What are
except
it's
you
for
West
talking?
Coast
Anthony's.
What are you
playing.
talking about, Tom? Are you in Hawaii now or something?
Yeah,
No, it's West Coast, right? So I can see a little bit of light because I
A
yeah,
have the
little
black,
bit, okay.
I have the blackout curtains so that the lighting doesn't change with for the recording, right?
well,
Sure,
cool.
sure.
Thank you as always, Tom, and I'll shoot you the link for the Zoom stuff on our end.
Awesome. Yeah.
Thank you. You did a marvelous job with the last one,
Thank you. It
Yes,
only took
I'll
me a
yeah,
say
month, but
right? The magic of editing. Oh gosh.
it is
literal
its own
literal magic.
reality. It's beautiful. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
All right, y'all.
Bye
So
bye.
I'll see you
Thank you.
in
Thank you very
another
much.
Thank you.
reality.
In another little frame that is just adjacent to this one.
There you go. Here it is. All right.
Bye.
Bye.